Hey, everybody. Anthony's just giving up, just reading the paper, multitasking while we're podcasting.
Oh, wait, this is on camera?
Yeah.
Oh.
We're live.
It's embarrassing.
We're not live. You should be embarrassed, actually.
I was reading about the new company formations in the Rochester Business Journal. I'd like to see who's doing what.
Yeah.
I don't need these on, right?
I don't even know why I wear them at this point. It's just like the cool thing to do when you're podcasting.
Yeah.
It's your problem, bro.
I don't know. I'm probably going to put them on even though they're not working.
Mixing it up this year between Anthony, myself, and then myself with other agents on our team doing podcasts. I want to get the big guy back in the saddle for a podcast here and off and running. Putting out a blog of top 5 market factors for 2022. Always like to say that I'm not in the prediction business, and it's been, if you go back and listen to episode 1 that we did of this and the early episodes, a lot of it's probably been, things have changed, right?
No.
Not saying that we're wrong, but
I haven't been wrong. You've been wrong a lot.
fair.
Everything I've said came to fruition.
I wanted to cover myself.
That's not your background. I went to the Nostradamus School of Predictions.
Top 5 market factors for this year. Before we get there, I mean, as we discussed, as we've beaten to death, like, it's going to be another seller's market this year. Just there's really no avoiding it.
Brace yourself.
Yeah. As Stephanie and I discussed last episode, and maybe it's more optimistic than anything, but hopefully less extreme than what it has been the last 2 years. So far this year, a few weeks in January, like, we're not really hearing that. And somebody was telling me the other day they lost out on an offer for something Ironicate, $50,000 over asking price when it was already priced, at a good number.
Yeah.
So it's tough to say. I mean, I guess we'll, these factors that we're going to talk about, would be maybe, what comes full circle or what comes together to lead to a less extreme seller's market this year. But make no mistake, like, we're not heading, unless something, again, predictions can be wrong, right? But unless something drastic happens, we're not heading to a balanced market or certainly flipping it to a buyer's market this year.
We have more well-paying jobs than we have than we have good candidates for, right?
Sure.
So, like, there's no indicators that this is going to change. And what that means is if you want a job and you want to work, there's a job for you. And what that also means is when you're gainfully employed, right, you have the confidence to go out and purchase a home. Maybe if you've been renting, right? It's consumer confidence, and that confidence derives from what the local workforce picture looks like, and then national trends as well. Our shifts happen a little bit slower, right? Like, we're going to get the news from Main Street before it looks, before we're looking at Rochester. And
Right.
Main Street is like, there's certain markets where we see the shift happen first, and we're probably 6 to 12 months behind, right? Like, Phoenix seems to be that spot where it's like, all right, it's going to start in Phoenix and it's going to trickle down, or in our case, it's going to trickle east.
Right. And then you gotta be careful about, like, big time emerging or just hot markets. Like, I just saw news this week that Facebook, or whatever the hell they're called now, is just leased 31 floors or something like that in Austin, Texas. Leaving California to go to Austin. Everybody's been going to Austin, it seems like, lately. And and the real estate market that they're experiencing because of that is gonna be drastically different than what, Rochester, New York has to offer. I know we're not in a down economy here. We're doing some good stuff. There's Amazon's being built, etc.
Yeah.
But that's not a direct correlation of what's happening in Austin to what's happening in Rochester. So just be careful how you kind of consume news and statistics and stuff like that in regards to where you are locally.
We're a different city, right? I mean, Austin, there's an abundance of executive jobs. We're always going to be really big with manufacturing and schools and hospitals. That's going to be the big driver for us, Rochester, for probably a long time. And with that being said, we're in a better position as far as being a tech city than most are, especially in upstate Western New York, right? Like, There's a lot of tech happening in Rochester. It's just not ideal for a lot of these big businesses to set up shop here because we live in New York State and our taxes are what they are. We're not as business friendly. Right. And yet we're stuck here. I mean, could you imagine the gorgeous men in Austin for these people to choose from when it comes to real estate agents?
Yes.
Like, you and I are Rochester 5. We're like an Austin 1.5 ski.
Damn it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Well, and the only reason we're a 5, I'm an 8, and you're
you're way
a 2.5. So it's like, yeah, gotcha.
I fit in well with the people under the bridge in Austin, I feel like.
you quick little side story.
No.
Jason and I went to a real estate convention in Austin, and Anthony booked the Airbnb that was like fancy style. It was like if you ever seen the movie Big, like that was his setup, and it was really, really cool. And when you book on Airbnb or VRBO, like they broadcast like this large circle, right? And like what you don't realize is within that circle, there's murders. And we were on the murder side of the bridge. Other side of the bridge goes into like Congress and Sixth
Street, I think.
3rd Street? 6th Street. No, it's 6th Street, yeah. Austin. It goes into like, the nicer areas, but boy, it changes quickly. So when I identified on the way to our place that there was like, it's not about like there being 100 homeless people. For some reason in Austin, the homeless are aggressive, right? Like you don't have to give anything to them. They're going to ask for it and they're going to follow you. And I didn't walk under that bridge. I made sure to get an Uber, or I rented one of those scooters that go like 15 miles an hour, or with me, a fast 7. And Jason was just roaming. He was roaming around, and at one point I saw him walking back towards our place under the bridge, shirtless, and
he's lying.
He wasn't shirtless.
I did have a taco in my hand, though.
Yeah, but like you don't want to walk around, and this was August in Austin. Like the average temperature
was like 100.
Yeah,
it was like the hottest day in
100 degrees.
There,
yeah, but it's dry heat. Well, underneath Jason's breast on his shirt, we're not dry, so do that math. Yeah. And I just
perspective's everything. I increased my Facebook followers that week. So
yeah, you did, and you had to give them all hotspots so they could log on.
All right, little tangent there. Top 5 market factors, or top 5 factors for the real estate market in 2022.
Yeah.
Number 5, inflation. I don't want to say to my surprise, but this, for what inflation has been doing of late, it hasn't really seemed to make a difference yet with the consumers.
No.
And let's just, I guess, take a step back. Inflation's kind of a confusing topic. It's just, the easy way to think about it is everything that you're buying costs more. Gas, bread, eggs, milk, everything. Like that you need, right? I mean, this is, the goods and services that consumers need to live. Mm-hmm. On top of everything else, right? Your luxury goods too. It costs more, therefore your dollar that you're earning, the dollar that's sitting in your checking or savings account, is essentially worth less.
Yep.
Not good, right?
Yeah. Cost of goods have gone up. Yeah. So I mean, it's gonna affect everything. When bread, milk, gas, and let's use those example when those double in price, right? Like those are necessities, right?
Yeah, necessity is the word.
Yeah. So the household budget, whether you're tracking it or not, like you have to accommodate for that. And when they have less money to spend on housing because the cost of goods go up so drastically, that's when you start to see a market shift. But not a lot of people talk about those indicators.
I was talking with somebody in the late fall last year. Said a big thing to follow to see like where this economy is going overall is track the the holiday spending numbers by consumers. And if that drops off a cliff, that's a good sign that people are kind of getting wary of things, or conservative, or in pain financially, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think we saw numbers that led to any panic this holiday season. It's it's kind of, one of these head scratchers to where, okay, is the economy just that strong and everybody's just doing that well that even, they fill their gas tank cost double. All this other stuff has increased costs that it just doesn't matter. Are we just like numb at this point as a society from everything going on that we just don't care? I think how it pertains to real estate and what we're headed into in the next year or so is, does this take a stranglehold on the consumer base to where they say, okay, I can no longer afford to make this major purchase or major move, in the form of housing?
Yeah, I think it affects it. And with that being said, I feel extremely confident that it doesn't affect it where we're going to see values decrease because of it. I think worst case scenario is with a lack of consumer confidence, which we're not seeing yet, but could happen really quickly with the rate of cost of goods going up. I think we're going to see is that this past year's market, 2021, it just established a new baseline. Like people now there've been enough time to succumb to the new values. Like, listen, we're going to have to be okay with that 900 square foot ranch on the west side selling for $250,000.
Now you hear about this topic that you just mentioned in terms of this is the new norm. You hear about this at a national level. I think it's even more relevant locally here, just because as we said before, like this region has just been undervalued for so long. We had to do what we'd done in the last few years, no matter what was happening around us. Just where are you going in the world where you can couple $100,000 home in the suburbs?
Yeah,
it just doesn't add up other places. So we had to catch up.
Yeah,
I think that's what we've done over the last few years is really catch up to the rest of the country.
And we're still not even caught up. Right. We're substantially lower than the national average still, right? So there's been a lot of attraction to our area here locally as well. And listen, we for the first time, I feel like we're hearing more and more of people moving from another area or another state or even downstate to upstate. And, our schools are still very attractive for people as well. And let's be serious. Your guys' awful kids drive all of your decisions, right? And hey, we've got good schools. I've met some of these kids and they're out of the schools. I don't think these schools are that great, but I guess they're better because I've also been to Alabama, right? So we're better.
Yeah, perspective.
Yeah, can read.
Just don't wind up under a bridge in Austin.
No.
So inflation on the list because it's such a factor for the overall economy. It's number 5 on the list because other than the increased costs, I hate to say it, but so far so good.
Yeah.
So, number 4, COVID. Touch on this quick. I think everybody's, aware of it.
Yeah.
I think the concept here is that this time, so, January of 2020, we had no idea what we were in for. And here we are 2 years later.
Yeah.
I think the concept here is that you just never know what's going to happen.
Who the hell, right? So let me paint this picture. This is pre-COVID, and I'm telling you that we're about to enter a worldwide pandemic, and
we didn't know what a pandemic was.
We're all gonna get. I didn't know either. Yeah. I just picture fucking monkeys in these test labs, and right. So if I told you we're going to experience a 3-year, this thing's never going away, so we're going to experience a pandemic the next 2 years. We're going to experience shutdowns, lockdowns. There's going to be the inability to leave your house unless it's absolutely mandatory. And our economy is going to do better than it ever has. And we're going to have more jobs than we have people. And the values of your home is going to go up about 35% over this next 2 years. How? I don't know.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. You say it out it fails the say it out loud test.
Yeah.
Right.
We
So-
thought we were done. I mean, you and I had this conversation going into it, like talks the shutdowns. Like,
Yeah.
do we lay people off? Like,
Right.
thank God we didn't, because
It was literally, yeah, I mean, I'm exaggerating because there's certainly people that have more, real issues than we have, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it felt like we were in a freaking movie.
oh my
The
God.
first few weeks of that, every hour something new was changing,
Yep.
and we had to keep up with it. And yeah, it was gut check time. It's like, man, are we going to have to, it was for us, it was more so like, how long are we not going to be able to pay ourselves before we have to start making decisions that affect the people around us?
Yeah.
It's on the list because who the hell knows? I think maybe if anything, it should be number 5 on the list, because I think if what 2020 and, to a degree last year proved is like the real estate industry, the consumers and the professionals in it will just find a way to adapt whatever is thrown. If there's a curveball coming this year from this issue, this pandemic, then, we'll figure it out, because even in the extreme of, spring of 2020, couldn't leave my basement, the business moved on.
Yeah. So let's also understand that this pandemic happens in 1995. We're in a Great Depression right now.
Yeah.
Technology
Yep.
has allowed us,
That's a great point.
right? Like,
That's a great point that people don't think about.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't have been able to do the business that we are able to do without technology. 100%.
Yeah.
Good point.
We have more choices.
Side note, so pandemic was a new word for me once this started. Is the word epidemic that I was familiar with before, and what the hell's the difference?
I don't know.
Fair?
Are you pandering to the epidemic? Yeah, that's what pandemic means. I don't know. Epidemic. Pandemic. Maybe pandemic's just disease related?
I don't know.
I don't know, Jason.
Anywho. 3. You got an update for us?
I was gonna say, I think it's just size.
Size.
I could be wrong about that too.
Size does matter, according to Shane L.
I also went to Rochester School, so
Number 3, supply chain issues.
Yeah.
Kind of, in a way, correlated to COVID, inflation in a way, too. For the real estate industry specific, it affects builders.
No doubt.
And it also affects people. There's a certain segment of the industry where, inventory comes from investors, whether small or big, flipping homes and providing product for new home buyers. Mm-hmm. And if builders cost, or they just can't get the freaking materials to build homes, and these flippers as well, that has an impact. And we've seen that since this all started,
Yep.
The pandemic, that is. And it's a matter of, like, if that doesn't get better, or God forbid it gets worse, that's going to have an effect on the market. I mean, we're already before the pandemic, we were in the market that we were in terms of being a seller's market, because a 10-year run of new construction, new homes being built, wasn't keeping pace with the demand. Mm-hmm. Part of the reason, anyway. So if this just gets tighter in terms of new homes being built, that's certainly not going to help anything, and only fuels the fire to this seller's market that we're in.
Yeah, and the supply chain, right? Like, so there's a huge demand, number one, and they can't fill these jobs. There's an abundance of openings at a lot of people are leaving the companies they've been at forever, because all of a sudden these other companies with these other cool jobs they thought of doing in the past, and yet there was no opportunity. They're changing. They're getting in a different industry. People are starting to do more of what they want to do and not what they felt like they had to do. And they were just so thankful to have a job. I mean, listen, let's go back 2008, 9, 10, 11. Like, if you had a job, you were fortunate.
Well, I read this, I think it was last week. The reality of that conversation, the job market and these employment numbers, is that the number of people who say they're unemployed has been dropping.
Yeah.
So, like, we're in theory good there. However, to contradict that, the number of jobs filled has been way off the mark for what the expectation should be. Our industry plays into that. A lot of people have been, getting into real estate,
Yeah.
getting into, whatever, crypto, I don't know. There's just a whole world out there of independent contractors that have really, said F it since this pandemic started and gone out on their own.
Yeah.
So, they consider themselves employed, but again, as you stated, the jobs being filled is not happening, from the corporate level. So.
No, and like, listen, there's been a lot of government money being thrown around, and it starts with business owners and it trickles down to the employees, right? So we're still playing with house money. There's going to be the day of reckoning when we have to pay this back, right? And I think like when that really shows up, and like I've even been resistant, as business owners, we've talked to our CPAs the last couple of years, and they're like, hey, you may want to do this due to the pandemic. Like there's money out there, and we've given pushback and be like, hey, like we're not experiencing this really bad. Like it's not hurting us that bad. And yet they're like, hey, Anthony, listen, when this has to get paid back, where do you think the money's coming from? So save it because it's going to have to get paid back, right? So those talks haven't happened yet, and yet we're going to experience some weird things over the next few years. We're still high in the hog right now.
Yeah, that's depressing.
Yeah.
Anywho, so hopefully, really the supply chain conversation, back to that, is the materials needed to provide housing on, relevant to the conversation we're having in regards to real estate, right? And that's just been a complete shit show the last 2 years. If that continues or gets worse, it's not helping anything, certainly, and could make matters worse in terms of the market conditions that we've experienced. So.
Yeah.
Number 2 is listing inventory. And, we've talked about it before. Important to note that it's not so much that the inventory has just like decreased substantially over, the now 5 years or so that we've been in the seller's market. It's more so that the demand has increased so much. And the simple supply and demand, the supply is not meeting the demand out there.
Correct.
So is there anything that changes that this year? Is there, again, we just touched on it. Can more homes be built? And I think, that the new build conversation, the new construction conversation, it's relevant here locally in Rochester, but it's more so a national conversation just because we don't, we're not that type of market where the market has to have, thousands and thousands of homes to be built, over the course of each year, each quarter, whatever, in bigger markets to really just, give people a place to live. But, don't get me wrong, there's enough builders out here and enough new developments that it can be an issue. So can homes be built? Can the baby boomer generation find homes to downsize into to where there's that flip flop of, our generation that moves into the standard colonial size? Is there anything that leads to an increase in supply to kind of stabilize this market is the factor?
Yeah, so housing is going to be very tough for single-family homes in new build developments or even spot builds to catch up to what we're seeing everywhere, which is like rentals, condos, apartments. Like places are going up like crazy, and they're already reserved before they're even under construction, right? So like we're probably going to see more of that. Like housing's going to be fulfilled, and yet if everyone has the goal of purchasing a home this year, and listen, if the arena only has, or the stadium only has 80,000 seats, right? And there's 150,000 people that want tickets, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
The value of the tickets are right. It's the same exact concept. Yep. There's only a certain number of seats.
Yep.
Right. So
hopefully there's something that can lead to more people getting off the fence and selling, essentially.
Yeah.
Is what really needs to happen.
Frank and Judy, you're in your 70s. What are you doing with that second floor? Right? Judy used it for her Kegel's room.
Number one factor for the real estate market in 2022 would be interest rates.
They're going up. They're already up. They're
Yep.
higher today than they were at any point last year.
I think, it's fairly obvious because that could cause the decrease in demand. And as we said, like, it's not so much that supply has dropped off a cliff that we need to make up for it, but the demand is so much more than what it has been. That's why we're in this, supply, demand, seller's market.
Yeah.
So do the rates increase to where the buyer pool out there just gets, sticker shock and says, nope, not buying. This isn't the year. Or is it still palatable at the end of the day? Can buyers look at it from the perspective of, unless something's happening to where I can make a cash purchase and don't have to have a
Yeah.
mortgage, do they have the wherewithal to say this is still historically low?
Yeah.
The days of 2.8, like I'm never going to see that again. So there's no sense in waiting for it. Or do they, I'd say greedy, but do they play around with it and wait or bail out?
So, listen, like, a lot of people are sticker shocked, right? They can't get used to what our new values are, and they are our new values. They're here to stay, and then some probably. And yet, it's okay to be sticker shocked at first, but focus more on, like, are you payment shocked? Because if you are, you're probably also going to not want to pay $2,500 a month for that apartment or condo, right?
Yeah,
Like,
there's really no win to it. Like,
No.
I don't think there's a savings anywhere, even with the increased rate.
it's housing. It's not a choice.
Unless you're in a home already
Yep.
with a low rate and you can get by with the space that you have.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just, you got to, and this isn't necessarily the right answer either. You got to look at the perspective to say our parents, back in the day had 18% for their first home. And, even, kind of a generally accepted norm is around 6%.
Dude, gas prices have
5,
literally
6%,
doubled
and
over the
we're-
last 2 years. Are you still driving?
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. So that's kind of some stuff leading to what could lead to whatever this market looks like in 2022. Our predictions are what they are, and they, this is kind of the thought process behind it. So I hope you found this helpful. Check us out, AnthonyButeraTeam.com. Give us a call, 222-SOLD.
Thanks, guys.